My accountant's voice was shaking when I answered the phone. That alone told me something was terribly wrong. In 32 years of handling my finances, David Chen had never once sounded anything less than completely composed. "Robert, where are you right now? Are you at home?" I was standing in my kitchen in Oak Bay, looking out at the garden Helen and I had planted together over 4 decades. The roses she loved were blooming, red and white, the colors she'd chosen for our wedding. "Yes, I'm home." "David, what's going on? You're scaring me." "Good. Stay there. Don't answer your door. Don't sign anything. I'm coming over right now, and I'm bringing someone with me. There's something you need to see. And Robert, I'm so sorry. I'm so deeply sorry." He hung up before I could ask anything else. I sat down at the kitchen table, the same oak table where Helen and I had shared thousands of meals, where we'd helped our son Michael with his homework, where we'd celebrated birthdays and anniversaries and quiet Sunday mornings with coffee and the newspaper. Helen had been gone 3 years now, pancreatic cancer, 6 weeks from diagnosis to the end. She'd held my hand in those final moments and made me promise to keep living, to find joy, to take care of our family. Our family. Michael and his wife, Vanessa, and their daughter, Emma. They were all I had left. 20 minutes later, David arrived with a woman I didn't recognize. She was in her 40s, professional, carrying a briefcase that looked like it contained evidence for a trial. "Robert, this is Sandra Morrison. She's a forensic accountant. I hired her 3 weeks ago when I noticed some irregularities in your accounts." "Irregularities? I don't understand." "What irregularities?" David sat across from me, his face grave. Sandra spread documents across my kitchen table like she was laying out a crime scene. "Robert," David said slowly, "someone has been systematically stealing from you. Over the past 18 months, approximately $847,000 has been transferred out of your investment accounts." The number hit me like a physical blow. That was nearly a third of my retirement savings. Money Helen and I had worked our entire lives to accumulate. I'd spent 35 years as a civil engineer for the province of British Columbia, and she'd been a nursing administrator at Royal Jubilee Hospital. "That's impossible," I said. "I check my statements every month. I would have noticed." Sandra leaned forward. "The transfers were structured specifically to avoid detection. Small amounts, between $8,000 and $15,000, moved irregularly to an offshore holding company in the Cayman Islands. The statements you received were altered. Someone with access to your email has been intercepting your actual statements and replacing them with falsified versions." My mind was reeling. Who would do this? How would someone even get access to my email? David and Sandra exchanged a look that made my stomach drop. "Robert," David said, "the holding company in the Caymans is called Morrison Bay Investments Limited. It was incorporated 18 months ago. The beneficial owner," he paused, swallowed hard, "is your son, Michael." "No." The word came out before I could think. "No. That's not possible. Michael wouldn't do this. He's my son. He's an accountant himself. For God's sake, he would never steal from me." Sandra slid a document toward me. "This is the incorporation record from the Cayman Islands Financial Registry. Michael David Harrison is listed as the sole beneficial owner. The registered address is a post office box in Georgetown." I stared at my son's name on the document. His middle name, David, the same as my accountant, the same as my father. We'd named him after the 2 most trustworthy men I knew. "There's more," David said. "I hesitated to bring this to you without being certain, so I hired a private investigator to do some additional research. Robert, Michael, and Vanessa are in serious financial trouble." He pulled out another folder. 3 years ago, Michael invested $400,000 of their savings into a cannabis startup that went bankrupt. Then he took out a second mortgage on their house in Uplands to try to recover the losses through cryptocurrency speculation. He lost another $350,000. Their mortgage is now $1.2 million on a house worth $1.4 million. Vanessa's boutique clothing store has been losing money for 2 years. They're 3 months behind on their property taxes. I thought about the new BMW Vanessa had been driving, the expensive renovations to their kitchen last year, Emma's private school tuition at Street Margaret's, all the dinners where Michael had insisted on paying, joking that it was the least he could do for his old man. Had all of that been funded with my money? Robert, Sandra said gently, there's something else you need to know. 2 weeks ago, Michael filed paperwork with a lawyer named Gerald Patterson. He's preparing a petition to have you declared mentally incompetent. The words didn't make sense at first. Mentally incompetent? I'm 68 years old. I do the Globe and Mail crossword every morning. I volunteer at the Veterans Center. I manage my own household, my own finances, my own life. David nodded grimly. We obtained a copy of the preliminary filing. They're claiming you've shown signs of cognitive decline. They have statements from their family doctor, photographs of you looking confused in public, documentation of times you allegedly forgot important information. I remembered now. Michael suggesting I see his family's doctor instead of my own physician. Just for a second opinion, Dad. Dr. Williams is excellent. The questions that doctor had asked me, questions that seemed odd at the time. Do you know what day it is? Can you count backwards from 100 by sevens? And the photographs. Vanessa always taking pictures at family gatherings. Smile, Robert. Let me get one of you with Emma. Had she been documenting me? Looking for moments when I seemed confused or disoriented? What happens if they succeed? I asked, though I already knew the answer. They become your legal guardians, Sandra said. They control your bank accounts, your investments, your property. Your house here in Oak Bay is worth approximately $2.8 million in the current market. Your investment portfolio, even after what they've stolen, is still worth about $1.9 million. Your pension provides $6,200 per month. If they get guardianship, they control all of it. David leaned forward. Robert, based on their financial situation, I believe they would sell this house within months. They'd liquidate your investments to pay off their debts. And you, he paused, his voice thick with emotion. They'd put you in the cheapest care facility they could find. Somewhere you'd have no autonomy, no dignity, no control over your own life. I looked around my kitchen, the window where Helen used to stand washing dishes, looking out at her roses, the corner where we'd put the Christmas tree every December, the marks on the door frame where we'd measured Michael's height as he grew. This house wasn't just property. It was 52 years of memories. It was Helen. It was everything we'd built together. What do I do? David straightened up. We fight back. But Robert, you need to understand something first. This isn't just about protecting your assets. This is going to destroy your relationship with your son. There's no coming back from this. I thought about Michael as a little boy, how he'd sit on my lap while I read him stories, how proud he'd been when he graduated from UBC, how he'd cried at his mother's funeral, holding on to me like I was the only solid thing left in the world. Then I thought about what he was doing now. The calculated theft, the manipulation, the willingness to strip his own father of everything, including his dignity. Tell me what we need to do. Over the next week, I followed David and Sandra's instructions meticulously. I changed all my passwords. I set up a new email account that only David knew about. I installed security cameras around my house, discreet ones that wouldn't be noticed. I met with Dr. Patricia Wong, a geriatric psychiatrist at Victoria General, who conducted a comprehensive cognitive assessment. Mr. Harrison, she said after our third session, I can state with complete professional certainty that you show no signs of dementia, cognitive impairment, or mental incompetence. Your memory is excellent, your reasoning is sharp, and your judgment is sound. In fact, your cognitive function is above average for your age group. She gave me a copy of her report, and I felt a small measure of relief. At least I had evidence that I wasn't losing my mind. But the hardest part was pretending everything was normal with Michael and Vanessa. Michael called me on Thursday. Hey, Dad, how are you doing? We missed you at dinner last Sunday. I'm sorry about that. I wasn't feeling well. That's what I figured. Listen, Vanessa and I were thinking, we should get together this weekend. Maybe you could come over for brunch on Saturday. Emma's been asking about you. And actually, there's something we wanted to discuss with you. Some financial planning stuff. Nothing major, just making sure everything's organized. Financial planning stuff. Of course, they wanted me to sign something. A power of attorney, probably. Or maybe documents that would give them access to accounts they hadn't managed to steal from yet. That sounds nice, I said, the words tasting like poison in my mouth. What time should I come over? How about 11? And Dad, don't worry about bringing anything. We'll take care of everything. I'll be there. After I hung up, I sat in my living room for a long time, looking at the photograph of Helen on the mantel. She was laughing in the picture, her hair blowing in the wind on the beach at Tofino. It was from our 40th anniversary trip, just a year before she got sick. What would you do, Helen? I asked the photograph. How would you handle this? But I already knew what she would say. Helen had always been the strong one. She would tell me to protect myself, to fight back, to not let anyone, not even our son, take advantage of me. The next morning, something unexpected happened. My granddaughter Emma showed up at my door. She was 16, with her mother's dark hair and her grandmother's kind eyes. She was supposed to be at school. Emma? What are you doing here? Is everything okay? Grandpa, she said, her voice trembling. Can I come in? I need to talk to you. It's important. I led her into the kitchen and made her a cup of tea. Her hands were shaking as she wrapped them around the mug. Emma, what's wrong? You're scaring me. She looked at me with tears in her eyes. Grandpa, I know what Mom and Dad are planning to do to you. And I have proof. My heart stopped. What do you mean, sweetheart? She pulled out her phone. Last week, I came home early from school. I had a headache, and the nurse sent me home. Mom and Dad were in the kitchen. They didn't hear me come in. They were talking about you, Grandpa. About your house and your money. About how they were going to take everything. She pressed play, and my son's voice filled my kitchen. The hearing is scheduled for 3 weeks from now. Patterson says we have a strong case. Between Dr. Williams' evaluation, the photographs, and the documentation we've been collecting, the judge should grant the guardianship order without much resistance. Vanessa's voice responded. And once we have control of his accounts, how long before we can access the money? Patterson says we can start liquidating assets immediately after the order is granted. The house should sell fast in this market. Even with the legal fees, we should clear at least $2.5 million. That pays off all our debt and leaves us with enough to start over. What about the money in the Cayman account? We leave that where it is for now. No connection to the guardianship. As far as anyone knows, that's just investment losses. Your father's getting old, these things happen. And by the time we're done, there won't be anyone left to ask questions. What about Emma? She loves him. She'll be devastated. A pause. Then Michael's voice, colder than I'd ever heard it. Emma will understand when she's older. This is about survival. Dad's sitting on millions while we're drowning in debt. It's not fair. We're his family. That money should be ours anyway. We're just taking it a little early. The recording ended. I realized I was crying. 68 years old, and my own son had reduced me to tears. Not because he was stealing from me, but because he'd said, Emma will understand. He was willing to destroy my granddaughter's relationship with me for money. He was willing to sacrifice her happiness, along with my dignity. Grandpa, Emma said, crying now too. I'm so sorry. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't sleep for days. I kept thinking maybe I heard it wrong. Maybe there was some explanation. But then I found this. She pulled out a folder from her backpack. I found this hidden in Dad's home office. It's all the documentation they've been collecting. The photos of you. The fake doctor's evaluation. The plan for how they're going to sell your house. Everything. I looked at my granddaughter. This brave, beautiful girl who had just betrayed her own parents to protect her grandfather. She could have stayed quiet. She could have pretended she didn't know. Instead, she'd chosen integrity over loyalty. Emma, I said, pulling her into a hug. You did the right thing. You did exactly the right thing. Am I a terrible daughter for telling you? No, sweetheart. You're a wonderful granddaughter, and your grandmother would be so proud of you. She cried against my shoulder for a long time. When she finally pulled back, her face was determined. What are we going to do, Grandpa? We're going to fight back, and we're going to win. I called David immediately and shared the recording and documents. He was silent for a long moment after listening. Robert, this changes everything. This isn't just evidence of fraud. This is evidence of conspiracy, theft, and elder abuse. With this, we don't just defend against their petition. We go on the offensive. What do you mean? I mean we file a counterclaim. We report the theft to the RCMP. We file a complaint with the Law Society about Patterson for helping them perpetrate this fraud. And Robert, we make sure every judge in British Columbia knows exactly what your son tried to do. The hearing arrived faster than I wanted it to. I sat in the courtroom of the British Columbia Supreme Court with Emma beside me, her hand in mine. David and Sandra were there, along with the lawyer they'd brought in to handle the case, a sharp-eyed woman named Margaret Thompson, who specialized in elder abuse cases. Across the aisle, Michael and Vanessa sat with Gerald Patterson. Michael wouldn't meet my eyes. Vanessa looked nervous, fidgeting with her expensive handbag. Justice William Chen presided. He was in his 60s, with a reputation for thoroughness and a particular disdain for financial fraud. Patterson went first, presenting their case with practiced smoothness. The photographs of me looking confused, Dr. Williams' evaluation, the documentation of my supposed cognitive decline. Your Honor, my clients are simply trying to protect their father from his own deteriorating mental state. Mr. Harrison is a vulnerable senior who, without proper guardianship, is at risk of making financial decisions that could devastate his retirement security. Then it was Margaret's turn. Your Honor, I'd like to present an independent psychiatric evaluation conducted by Dr. Patricia Wong at Victoria General Hospital last week. She submitted the report. Justice Chen read it carefully, his eyebrows rising. Dr. Wong found no evidence whatsoever of cognitive decline. In fact, she noted that Mr. Harrison's mental function is above average for his age. He completed all cognitive assessments, with scores that would be impressive for someone 20 years younger. Margaret continued, dismantling their evidence, piece by piece. The photograph of Mr. Harrison looking confused at the grocery store. He was trying to read the small print on a nutrition label without his reading glasses. The supposed disorientation at Dr. Williams' office? Mr. Harrison had never seen Dr. Williams before, and was understandably uncomfortable being examined by a stranger. The allegation that he forgot his own phone number? He'd recently changed providers, and was still memorizing the new number. She paused for effect. But, Your Honor, the most important evidence I have to present relates to the true motivation behind this petition. She played Emma's recording. In the silent courtroom, Michael and Vanessa's voices echoed, cold and calculating. The house should sell fast in this market. We should clear at least $2.5 million. That money should be ours anyway. We're just taking it a little early. I watched the color drain from Michael's face. Margaret continued. Your Honor, this is not a loving son trying to protect his father. This is a calculated scheme to steal approximately $5 million from a vulnerable senior citizen. Moreover, we have evidence that the petitioner has already stolen $847,000 from Mr. Harrison's investment accounts over the past 18 months through an offshore shell company. She submitted the forensic accounting report, the Cayman Islands Incorporation documents, the bank records tracing the stolen funds. Patterson jumped to his feet. Your Honor, this recording was obtained without my client's consent. It should be inadmissible. Justice Chen's voice was ice. This is a civil proceeding, Mr. Patterson. The rules of evidence are different than in criminal court. And frankly, I'm more interested in the substance of what was recorded than the method of its acquisition. He turned to Michael. Mr. Harrison, would you like to explain to me why you're discussing selling your father's home and liquidating his assets while he sits in this courtroom, clearly of sound mind? Michael opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Vanessa grabbed his arm, whispering frantically. Your Honor, Patterson tried. My clients were merely discussing hypothetical estate planning scenarios. This has been taken completely out of context. Out of context? Justice Chen's voice rose. Your client said, and I quote, Dad's sitting on millions while we're drowning in debt. That money should be ours anyway. We're just taking it a little early. What context could possibly make that acceptable? The courtroom was silent. Justice Chen shuffled the papers in front of him for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was heavy with disgust. I'm dismissing this petition with prejudice. This means it cannot be refiled under any circumstances. Furthermore, I'm issuing a restraining order. Michael Harrison and Vanessa Harrison are prohibited from contacting Robert Harrison or coming within 100 meters of his residence for a minimum of 3 years. I'm also referring this matter to the RCMP for criminal investigation into fraud, theft, and elder abuse. And Mr. Patterson, he turned to the lawyer, I'm filing a complaint with the Law Society of British Columbia regarding your conduct in this matter. You should have recognized this as a fraudulent scheme before you ever filed these documents. He turned to me, his expression softening. Mr. Harrison, I'm deeply sorry for what you've experienced. No parent should ever have to endure what your son and daughter-in-law have put you through. I'm ordering that all legal fees associated with your defense be paid by the petitioners. And I strongly recommend that you update your estate plan to protect yourself from any future attempts at manipulation. I looked across the aisle at Michael, my son, the little boy I'd taught to ride a bicycle in Beacon Hill Park, the young man I'd helped move into his first apartment, the adult I'd trusted completely, foolishly, unconditionally. He was crying now, but they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of someone who'd gambled everything and lost. "Dad!" he called out as the court adjourned. "Dad, please! You have to understand. We were desperate. We didn't have any other choice." I stood up slowly, Emma still holding my hand. "You had choices, Michael. You could have told me you were in trouble. You could have asked for help. Instead, you chose to steal from me. You chose to try to take away my home, my dignity, my autonomy. You chose to treat me like an asset, to be liquidated, rather than a father to be loved." I looked at Vanessa, who was sobbing into her hands. "And worst of all, you were willing to destroy Emma's relationship with me. Your own daughter. You were willing to sacrifice her happiness for money." I turned to leave, but Michael's voice stopped me one last time. "So that's it? You're just going to walk away? I'm your son." I turned back, and I saw him clearly, maybe for the first time. Not the child I'd raised or the man I'd thought I knew, but the person he'd actually become. "You were my son." But the man who sat in that courtroom, who stole from me, who lied to me, who tried to have me declared incompetent so he could sell my home, that man isn't anyone I recognize. Helen would be ashamed of what you've become. "I'm ashamed of what you've become." Emma squeezed my hand. "Let's go home, Grandpa." "Yes, sweetheart. Let's go home." The RCMP investigation took 6 months. Michael and Vanessa were eventually charged with fraud, theft over $5,000, and elder abuse. They pleaded guilty to avoid a trial and received 2 years of probation, 200 hours of community service, and a restitution order requiring them to repay the $847,000 they'd stolen. They had to sell their house in Uplands to pay the restitution. Last I heard, they were renting a small apartment in Langford, trying to rebuild their lives. I haven't spoken to Michael since the day of the hearing. He's tried to reach out a few times, letters mostly, asking for forgiveness. I read them, but I don't respond. Maybe someday I'll be able to forgive him, but that day hasn't come yet. Emma moved in with me after the trial. Her parents had kicked her out when they realized she'd been the one who provided the recording and documents. 16 years old, and they'd chosen their pride over their daughter. But I had a big house and a bigger heart, and Emma needed someone who would put her first. We established a new routine. Breakfast together before school, homework at the kitchen table, weekends exploring Vancouver Island, all the places Helen and I had loved. Emma helped me in the garden, learning to tend the roses her grandmother had planted. "Grandpa," she asked one evening as we were deadheading the flowers, "do you think you'll ever forgive Dad?" I set down my pruning shears and looked at her. "Forgiveness is complicated, Emma. I'm not sure I'll ever be able to trust your father again. But I try not to let bitterness consume me. Your grandmother used to say that holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die." Emma nodded slowly. "I miss them sometimes, Mom and Dad. I know what they did was wrong, but they're still my parents." I pulled her into a hug. "Of course you miss them. That's natural. And when you're ready, if you want to have a relationship with them, I'll support you. But that's your choice to make, not mine. All I ask is that you're careful and that you protect yourself." She hugged me back tightly. "I'm not ready yet, maybe someday, but right now, I'm exactly where I need to be." A year later, Emma and I stood in the garden together, looking at the new plaque we'd installed beside Helen's roses. Her name, her dates, and a quote we'd chosen together. Family is not about blood. It's about who stands beside you when everyone else walks away. Do you think Grandma would have liked this? Emma asked. I think your grandmother would have loved it, and she would have been so proud of you. My phone rang. It was David. Robert, I thought you should know. The Law Society completed their investigation. Gerald Patterson has been disbarred. He can never practice law in British Columbia again. I looked at Emma, who was carefully watering the roses, her movements gentle and precise, just like Helen's had been. Thank you, David, for everything. That night, as Emma worked on her university applications, and I read beside her, I realized something important. Michael had tried to take everything from me. My home, my money, my dignity, my independence. He'd failed, but in the process, he'd lost everything himself. His reputation, his career, his daughter, his freedom, his self-respect. But what he'd actually done, without meaning to, was show me what really mattered. Not the house worth $2.8 million, though I was grateful to keep it. Not the investment portfolio or the pension or the bank accounts. What mattered was sitting across from me, chewing her pencil as she wrote her personal statement for UBC. My granddaughter, who'd had the courage to do what was right, even when it cost her everything. Who'd chosen integrity over loyalty, truth over comfort, her grandfather over her parents. Helen used to say that people show you who they really are when there's something to lose. Michael showed me he was willing to sacrifice his father for financial security. But Emma showed me that courage and integrity could survive even in the most difficult circumstances. That doing the right thing was possible even when it meant losing everything else. I'm 69 years old now. I've lived through the best of times and the worst of times. I've loved and lost, and been betrayed by the person I trusted most. But I've also been saved by a 16-year-old girl who refused to stay silent when she saw injustice. I've learned that trust, once broken, is almost impossible to rebuild. I've learned that money can corrupt even the closest relationships. I've learned that the people who should protect you are sometimes the ones who hurt you most deeply. But I've also learned that family isn't just about blood. It's about the people who show up when everything falls apart. It's about second chances and new beginnings. It's about choosing love over fear, integrity over convenience, dignity over despair. To anyone out there who might be facing something similar, let me tell you this. If someone in your family is trying to take advantage of you, trying to control you, trying to steal what you've worked your entire life to build, fight back, get help, document everything. Trust your instincts. You're not crazy. You're not confused. You're not paranoid. And if you're an adult child of an aging parent, remember this. Your inheritance is not yours until it's given to you. Your parents don't owe you their house, their savings, their dignity. They earned it. They decide what happens to it. And if you try to take it through manipulation or legal trickery, you might get the money, but you'll lose something far more valuable. You'll lose yourself. Michael got 18 months of planning, thousands of dollars in legal fees, and a criminal record. What did it cost him? His father, his daughter, his freedom, his reputation, his self-respect. Was it worth it? I don't think he'd say yes, but you'd have to ask him yourself. As for me, I've got a granddaughter to help through university, roses to tend, and a lot of life left to live. The house in Oak Bay isn't just an asset worth millions anymore. It's home. It's where Emma is becoming the remarkable young woman she was always meant to be. It's where memories of Helen still linger in every room, every flower, every ray of sunshine through the kitchen window. It's where justice was served and family was redefined. And that's worth more than all the money in the world.